It'll be up in just a second.
Yeah, it looks like we're good to go. I see meeting is now streaming live on YouTube, so.
Okay, we're all set. It's muted and there we go.
Alrighty. Well, thanks everybody for joining today's meeting of the Cultural Policy Subcommittee. I hope everybody is staying as cool as they can out there, and that you've all had a chance to review today's agenda and minutes, and of course the last pieces of the cultural policy. Just want to check in to see if there are any changes or additions to the agenda today from Andrea or Jane or Todd or Virginia. All right. Seeing none, we'll move to item 2 on the agenda, which is the adoption of the previous minutes from our meeting on July the 19th. So can I get a mover to approve and adopt the minutes from that last meeting, please? Okay, I see Jane. And a second. I guess I'm the only one who was here. Am I allowed to second?
Yes, yep.
Okay, I second. And any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor remain silent. Anyone opposed or abstaining, please indicate so in the chat or open your mic. Perfect. Looks like motion approved. So let's move on to declaration of pecuniary interests. Does anyone have such an interest to declare today? All right, seeing and hearing none, let's jump right into item number 4. New business, which is the continuation of our review of the cultural policy. So today, I believe we're starting from section 3.3. We did have some late breaking edits that were submitted, so I'll be referring to those as I continue to move us through the document and sharing those to guide some of the discussion. I'll share them out loud. It would be really wonderful if we were able to conclude our review today, just for the sake of time. But that being said, there will be another opportunity when the whole CBC meets to weigh in on the final policy document. And of course, if our discussion needs more time, then we will take it. We don't want to rush it, but if we can, for the sake of expedience, move through, then that would be wonderful. I also understand that a few of the sections that we're going to be looking at today could be significantly whittled down or removed in light of recent changes just to the cultural plan, the policy, and the way that we're organizing now. So I wondered if Todd or Virginia wanted to speak to that just a little bit before we dive into our more methodical point-by-point review. Anything that we should know about the sections that we're reviewing today and pieces that might be taken out?
Miranda, I was just looking at 4.6, the cultural plan. So it says advocate for the development of a municipal cultural plan. So we've kind of done that. So I don't know if that is relevant at this point, unless we want to update it just to say, you know, at the end of this or at the termination of this cultural plan, we will agree to engage in another cultural plan or something to that effect.
Go ahead, Virginia. Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, I think I'd like to keep that section there. I think it should say, you know, advocate for the implementation, because a lot of those implementation components are going to require funding. And then the continued renewal of it, because, you know, this takes us to 2024, at which point we're going to want to go back, take a look at it, and look at mapping out the next 5 years, I think.
So I've just popped in a note to that effect, Virginia, in the document that I'm looking at. And when we come to that section, I'll bring that up and we can talk about it when we get to that section as a committee. But if there's nothing else, then we'll start up at section 3.3. And do what we've done the last couple of times, which is just run through point by point. I'll share the suggested edits that I have on the document that I'm working from. And if there are other edits that Jane or Andrea you'd like to mention, or any other comments that you have, Todd or Virginia, feel free to jump into the discussion as we go. And we'll try to keep this conversational and moving forward. Sound okay to everybody? Okay. Okay, so point 3.3 is to provide appropriate conditions in which culture can thrive and prosper. The first comment that I have is on that 3.3 bullet point and just changing culture to arts, culture, and heritage so that the wording is consistent with other places within the plan. And I'll just say that many of the edits that I have on the policy that I have in front of me are suggestions to change variations of culture or art or heritage to arts, culture, and heritage so that they're all encompassing and consistent. I also have a note for point 3.3.1. That point says, otherwise allocated funds shall either be directed towards similar use in alternative facilities or to the City of Sault Ste. Marie Cultural Endowment Trust Fund. And I have a note just saying, should the alternative facilities piece be more specific? Or could or should it say something like at the discretion of city officials in consultation with the Cultural Vitality Committee, or something else that's a little bit less ambiguous? Any comments about that suggested edit or about anything else regarding 3.3.1? Go ahead, Andrea.
I'm just wondering, like, are the document that you're working off of that has the comments, do the rest of us have access to that? Because I have one that shows some of the comments, but nothing below 3.3.
Mm-hmm. Full disclosure, the comments that I'm looking at are the ones that I sent in to Todd and Virginia just prior to the meeting, so nobody else has them. But if you'd like, I can send them forward. If it's easier.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. Any other comments about 3.3.1? My edits were very, very late breaking. Go ahead, Virginia.
I think that helps clarify it, because I think the process would be in the event there was additional funds, it would come back to the committee, because the committee will be weighing on public art projects, which this would be. So I think it just adds that clarity to it. As far as the Cultural Endowment Trust Fund, I'm not sure if we want to have it out. So the trust fund, we're only allowed to use the interest related to the trust. So I don't know if the committee would rather have it go to the trust fund or have that as an option, and then also have the Arts and Culture Reserve Fund as an option as well. Because the reserve fund's more easily accessible, you could access the full amount, whereas the trust fund, you can only access the interest at any given time, which at this point, the value of it's low, so you may only be able to access like $400 or $500 total versus giving the money in. So I think having maybe that other option of, now that we have an Arts and Culture Reserve Fund, that may be something we could ask to have it also allocated to, in the event that we didn't have anything specific at that point in time we wanted to do.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I see a nod from Andrea. I see a nod from Jane. I'll give a nod. Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention, bringing that up, weighing that out as an option. One more little edit that I have here. If we continue to make reference to City of Sault Ste. Marie Cultural Endowment Trust Fund there, just to refer to section 5 of this document someplace there, so that people can link the mention of the fund to the end of the document.
Miranda, can I say something?
Of course, Jane.
Just in relationship to what you have said, if it's a linkable link. I think it will be much easier to embed the link underneath than to refer people to the bottom of the list, the form.
Sure, if it's a, can we do that? If it's an interactive PDF, I think that we can link it section to section. But in terms of like a written printed policy, I think just referring to section 5 of the document could at least connect folks to more information about the fund if they were looking for it. Does that sound sensible? Okay. All right. Moving on to 3.3.2. I flagged culture within to provide appropriate conditions in which culture can thrive and prosper, and just said to change that to arts, culture, and heritage, again, for consistency's sake. These are little, perhaps little fiddly mentions, but if we're at it, we might as well make things consistent. Again, if there are other comments or edits, go ahead, Andrea.
I mean, it just seems redundant to have this point listed when it's already exactly the same as the section heading.
Yeah, so perhaps removal of that point outright. All right, I see nods all around. Thanks, Andrea. 3.3.3. Question about this, this database, a comprehensive database. It says as it stands for inclusion in municipal databases, but is the database that is planned as part of our plans moving forward going to be hosted and held and maintained at the city? And going to be a municipal database just by virtue of that?
Yeah, so we do have a database currently. I would say that it definitely could use some expanding. When we went through the cultural plan and the outreach to really start to build that database, you know, we realized that there's a lot more, we have a lot more in the community and a lot more artists that we need to have included that there was hesitations, I don't know, or they didn't get the information. So really that definitely does need to be built out. Our hope is that the new website will have a lot of those resources on it so that it's going to be easily accessible to the community and not just a database that we have in our filing system. So, you know, I think keeping it as a municipal database is great. And again, you know, referencing emails and websites are really only there if the members in the community want to share their personal information or their Instagram links. It'll be whatever social media they want to share it that way. So
go ahead. Thank you, Virginia. Go ahead, Todd.
Just to add to that, we're also through the public art policy creating like the physical plant type of what's in our inventory as far as actual artworks and that kind of stuff. So all these things will be all tied together. The more of the on the physical plant will be an internal one, but like Virginia had mentioned, everything on the website will be for artists and promotion and resources and all that kind of stuff. So that database, from what we've heard in all of our other external consultations with all the different arts groups, that's really what everybody's looking for, was that one-stop shop where they could find people and kind of promote themselves and get their own names out there. So hopefully we can get that up and running in the not too distant future.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great. I'm just wondering about the wording given all of that. So it says inclusion in municipal databases right now, but should it perhaps say something along the lines of link to municipal resources or link to municipal website or something like that, rather than using the word database? Or am I just being very picky about words here? Andrea, are you nodding because I'm being picky or because you agree?
No, I mean, I think, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody reading this and they might not know the plan to publicize this. So, either putting in the policy whether all of the information collected is going to be made public, or where artists or cultural workers will have the opportunity to, have themselves and their resources made public.
What if it said for inclusion in the arts and culture website, and then we have the link to the website so that, you know what I mean? They're going to know where they're going to go to get that information, because it's going to be a lot more available to the community than it is currently.
That works, and I see nods all around. Great. Jane, was there anything that you wanted to add to that? Okay. Thanks, folks, for that discussion. Point 3.3.4, I've got highlighted cultural facilities. And again, it's just a slight rewording to say facilities related to arts, culture, and heritage. And moving down to 3.3.5, I'm just wondering, the point says work with agencies such as the Economic Development Corporation, Tourism Sault Ste. Marie, Downtown Association, Chamber of Commerce, and other relevant organizations to promote Sault Ste. Marie as a good place to live and visit, in part because of our cultural activities and attractions. I just wonder if it might be worthwhile to nod to the Algoma district as well there, and also to change cultural activities to arts, culture, and heritage activities, recognizing that this is a municipal policy, but that in many areas of what we're doing and talking about, we're also considering the district. I see your hand, Andrea.
Yeah, I agree with the district. I would also just say, I mean, it's kind of clunky in general. So even just saying promote arts, culture, and heritage activities as important attractions within Sault Ste. Marie and the Algoma region to agencies such as everything else, instead of, leave out, promoting Sault Ste. Marie as a good place to live and visit. Like, I don't think that part needs to be in there.
Should we add a reference in there about the cultural tourism strategy? Because I think that kind of ties into that whole, place to live and visit. It ties into all of those organizations all work together to promote that, you know what I mean, to help implement the cultural tourism strategy.
I would agree, because that's something that might be an ongoing strategy as well, that'll be developed, like one for now, but as soon as that one is completed, we probably would want to do another one and revisit that. So maybe having that, and even having the cultural tourism strategy mentioned somewhere in this policy, which it hasn't been to this point, might be a good idea to put it in that point there.
And maybe as we mentioned it, for somebody who really want to read the strategy, if we can link it up, because just mentioning the strategy without the details leaves any inquisitive person hanging, because they would like to know what is it that is in the strategy.
Andrew, how did you word that again? The start of that? I wasn't fast enough writing.
So just saying promote cultural and heritage activities as attractions and elements that increase the quality of living in Sault Ste. Marie and the Algoma region through agencies such as the Economic Development Corporation, etc. So just turning the sentence around, kind of.
That all feels like a great rework. And thank you, Jane, for reminding us about the linking and the access piece too.
I'm wondering then, I'm looking down at 3.36, where it says to develop and maintain a municipal cultural plan. Do we maybe reference to, you know, support and maintain the municipal cultural plan and the cultural tourism strategy or something in there, and put the two reference the plans in there versus keeping it up at the top, or just add a separate line for the cultural tourism strategy somewhere in there?
I think all the plans would fit nicely into 336. If we just put all of the different plans in that one, because it's already referring to other departments' plannings, development strategies within it. But just mentioning those few, like the culture plan, the cultural tourism strategy, maybe the public art policy can get a little mention in there or something like that.
I do see Andrea's hand and wonder if do you have a feeling about this piece?
Well, I guess I was just wondering if the cultural or if the tourism strategy is totally within the purview of the cultural policy. Like, doesn't it sort of go beyond the boundaries of this, or is it the responsibility of, does it fall under the cultural policy?
Well, it's all connected because the cultural tourism strategy is basically the strategy of how you plug arts, culture, and heritage into the tourism, kind of connecting the producers with the tourism sector so that they have that creative back and forth. So they're the cultural heritage and arts folks are creating the products that the tourism develop or people can develop into attractions for the city. So the plans, like, you can't cut the culture out of that plan.
No, I realize that. I'm just wondering if that plan is specifically within the purview of the cultural policy. Like, to me, it seems more like something connected to it rather than 3.3.6 is talking about the responsibility of developing and maintaining the cultural plan, which seems like a proper fit for the cultural policy. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm just wondering whether.
Well, I was just reading it because it says encourages and facilitates integrating culture as defined in the policy into other departments' planning and development strategies. So it is like taking us and making arts and culture part of everybody's development. So in a planning sense, it would be, you know, they plan for some kind of public art as part of the regular things, tourism plans for helping develop culture as part of the regular thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I think I misunderstood. I thought you were including it in the first part of the sentence.
Oh, no, I was just
The second part
like
of
under those other integrating into others. So cultural tourism strategy would be an example and that kind of stuff. But I see what you're getting, like you're just saying with stuff that's just arts and culture. So that would be like the public art policy is directly connected to this policy. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, just the first part of the sentence about developing and maintaining. So we're not also responsible for developing and maintaining the cultural tourism strategy, but it's connected to it. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause I think I think at the end you could just add policy into other departments, planning and development strategies such as the cultural tourism strategy, and then have the link like Jane suggested to bring it to that location and just tack it on there.
Thanks again for that discussion. I have a couple more little pieces around consistency to make sure we catch in 336. So the municipal cultural plan is now called the community cultural plan. So we'll switch that up. Integrating culture, let's change that to integrating arts, culture, and heritage. And there's an extra and floating around in that sentence between into and other. That if the wording in that sentence sticks, we can chop that and out of there. Any other points around 336? I think we've talked that one pretty much into order. So moving on to section 3.4. To acknowledge the importance of the cultural industry, I would say arts, culture, and heritage sectors. in the development of civic pride and a municipal sense of identity and its economic impact on the city. So in 3.4.1, I've highlighted the cultural life of the community and suggested substitution of contribute significantly to arts, culture, and heritage in the community.
Miranda, can I ask just a clarifying question about 3.4?
Of course.
Are we just looking only at the economic impact of the city, or can we consider the socio-economic impact of the city?
I think we should consider that too. And thanks for raising that point again. I know we've had this discussion in other sections. So let's add that in there to this point as well. Thank you, Jane.
So it'll be recognize the social and economic impact, right? Of arts, culture, and heritage.
Sounds good. And then in point 3.4.2, we would potentially say that again. So recognize the social and economic impact of arts, culture, and heritage on the city of Sault Ste. Marie. And I would say add organizations in there too. So encourage local businesses, corporations, and organizations to be a bit more encompassing. Any other questions or points to raise around 3.4.1 or 3.4.2, folks?
I just agree with the organization element.
Alrighty. Move on to 3.5. So I have flagged facilities and organizations in the cultural area and suggest instead arts, culture, and heritage facilities and organizations. Then skipping to 3.5.2, but if, oh, Andrea, did I see your hand? No, okay. Flag me down again if you wish. In 3.5.2, it says screen all applications for civic grants. Is that language civic grants consistent in any of the other granting materials, or can we just call them grants?
Yeah, I think just for grants for cultural endeavors under the Arts and Culture Assistance Program.
Okay.
International cultural competition policy. Yeah.
Alrighty. And then I had a question actually about 3.5.3 that I'm going to put to the committee. 3.5.3 refers to a separate cultural budget, which funds the Arts and Culture Assistance Program, or ACAP. And I'm just wondering, just for clarity's sake, is that the project funding budget or another budget? Like how does that relate to 3.5.2?
That is the money that's allocated to the committee to recommend the grants to. So that's the 104.4 or 5.
So that's project funding as well as operating funding.
We have a little bit of operating funding and hopefully a little bit more operating funding, but that's just operational within the city. So the committee wouldn't be weighing in on, mileage and and advertising and all of those, phone expenses and stuff like that. So it's really stuck to the ACAP funding.
Okay. Thanks, Virginia. Todd, I see you.
Yeah, it's just the ACAP, and that has operational, there's some seed funding, there's project money for large and small, and then there's festival and event funding, kind of large and small. And there's also cultural diversity funding, all in that envelope of ACAP.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. I wonder if maybe we should provide some extra clarity in that point. Andrea, too much?
Yeah, or even just having it read maintain the ACAP, maintain and expand the budget which funds the ACAP program independent of those organizations with secured funding, or yeah, more explanation of that, the addition.
Organizations with secured funding would be like the Bush Plain Museum and those groups. So I think that's why that was called out as separate from that. Like, this is a separate kind of funding stream from that funding. They're not connected at all. And I think that's why that was called out in that case, just to ensure that everybody was aware that that wasn't all getting lumped together.
So maybe it's just, again, an issue of like a definition more clearly defining the ACAP program. Yeah.
I think it just that we have to explain what the independent of the organizations, what an organization with secured funding is, and then that'll make it so you understand what the difference is between that and the ACAP.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I'm just trying to read it for clarity, imagining not knowing what it is. But yeah, maybe that's just me. Sorry.
I think I think we could just call it by what that application process is, right? Financial assistance for, it's financial assistance for organizations, but it does make it a little bit muddied because there's two separate processes that have to be followed. So I think if it said maintain and expand the arts and culture assistance program funding, I don't know that it has to say the separate cultural budget.
Yeah, I think just that would be a focus of the cultural plan from our last CBC discussion as well, was about that budget and how to grow that budget, because that's the one that's going to get the most work done in the community. So I think really, yeah, that second part doesn't need to be there. It's just that we're agreeing to maintain and expand the ACAP program going forward.
Do you think that we need to reference independent of those organizations with secured funding?
I don't think so.
No.
The
It's
policy,
just confusing.
And
Yeah.
I think it can also could be read as, oh, well, I have funding from secured funding from OIC. I can't
Yeah, it's confusing.
qualify. So I think it doesn't need to be there.
so I have the sentence reading now, maintain and expand the arts and culture assistance program funding.
Very clear and to the point. Thanks, everyone. Okay, and then 3.5.4, instead of saying cultural groups, I flagged saying arts, culture, and heritage groups or individuals. Does anyone have any other points that they'd like to raise for conversation about section 3.5? Any of those subpoints? Going once, going twice. All right, let's move to 3.6. We can jump back if something comes to mind. To encourage the development of historic buildings as alternate cultural facilities. So scanning through this section, I've only got one flag. And it goes back to arts, culture, and heritage organizations in section 3.6.3, substituting cultural organizations for arts, culture, and heritage organizations. Any other points to raise in 3.6? Wordings to shift? No? Okay. Then let's head on to section 4, which we all know tons about and can provide lots of input. So the Cultural Vitality Committee. First flag I have here is that in 4.1, we say Cultural Vitality Committee and then in brackets CVC. So every other occurrence of Cultural Vitality Committee in this paragraph can just be changed to CVC to be made consistent.
And I would like to also point out something on that first line. It says that works within the cultural policy for the city of Sault Ste. Marie to ensure equitable access to all. Well, I reserve my comment. I was just thinking about the word equitable, and in the previous lines, we've been talking about equal access, because equity and equal is different, not the same thing. So are we using equal, or are we using equitable?
Let's go back to that last point about equal. I'll just scan through to look for it here. It had to do with the application process, I think,
Yeah.
in 3.5.4.
Mhm.
I think in the previous conversation, we were preferring equitable over equal because equal does not always turn into equitable access.
Yeah.
So, to try and, that would be my preference, would be the equity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the sentence would read then, develop and promote uniform criteria to ensure that new and existing arts, culture, and heritage groups or individuals have equitable opportunity to apply for financial assistance.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do it. Thanks for flagging that, Jane. Okay. And definitely reading through these sections of the policy, certain of these passages felt very familiar, like we've seen them before and just can't. I know we've had a lot of conversation about the policy, but any other places where this language is appearing, they'll be pulled, like the statements will be pulled from this policy that we are editing now, right? To be made consistent with this policy. Okay. Okay, and another picky thing in the second paragraph under 4.1, there's a very long sentence there. The Cultural Vitality Committee oversees cultural support programs, participates in city planning and development processes, and undertakes special initiatives approved by council and perform the duties as described in the Cultural Vitality Committee terms of reference. So between processes and undertakes, let's just remove that and put a comma. I told you I had a comma suggestion in here, Todd. And in 4.2, oh, Andrea, go for it.
I guess I'm just a bit concerned that the committee's role is to implement the community cultural plan. I mean, that's not entirely within the committee's capabilities or purview. I mean, it's going to take the city. So I think we work with the city to implement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's maybe being overly picky too, but
it's a good catch. Maybe we say support the implementation. Okay. It's all on us. All right, support the implementation. Good catch.
Sorry, I'm just under 4.4. Todd, do you know, did some additional wording get added in? I'm trying to find an old version.
Oh, on which, that second paragraph of 4.1?
Just about the review of planning.
I don't think we touched anything beyond like
Oh, wait, sorry.
that
4.1.
section.
The Heritage Committee, so I'm just looking, sorry, and I'm bumping back. I just caught something when I was reading it. And I'm just wondering if something got flipped or the Heritage Committee got removed, because under 3.3.4 require the circulation of development proposals where rezoning or development requests may impact cultural facilities. I'm trying to, okay.
Which version are you looking at, Virginia? Like the original or the last review?
I'm trying to pull up little copies here, sorry. Because I know, I guess it's just cultural facilities. The thing is, if it's related to heritage, and this is just getting nitpicky, if there's anything that has a heritage impact, the Heritage Committee reviews those proposals. So if there's like a rezoning or anything, it comes through the Heritage Committee or to myself, and then I determine if it's got heritage impact. From there, then I take it to the Heritage Committee to review. Example would be the redoing Simpson Street, right? So the committee will weigh in because the streetscape is a very important part of that whole street. It wouldn't necessarily come to the Cultural Vitality Committee to weigh in on that piece. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know, we talk about the Heritage Committee in here, so I don't know if we need to maybe in that statement add require the circuit for arts culture be circulated to the Cultural Vitality Committee or the Municipal Heritage Committee where appropriate. To 3.34. I don't think the committee wants to look at every application that impacts heritage.
That sounds sensible to me. What do you think, Jane and Andrea? Yeah. Thanks for catching that, Virginia.
I'll increase your workload and you guys are already really busy.
We're already implementing the plan. Supporting. All righty. Thank you for that. So is it okay to jump back down to 4.1-ish?
Yeah, and then just keeping that consistent in 4.1, the last sentence would read, the Cultural Vitality Committee oversees cultural support programs, participates in city planning and development processes, and I would just add where appropriate, or as related to 3.3.4, because that would define it as opposed to having to repeat that, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Delineate between the cultural vitality and heritage.
Yeah, makes sense. Virginia, you're very good at policy.
No, I don't know about that. The committee members are much better at wordsmithing.
Okay, so is that everything for 4.1? Looks like, okay. So a picky thing in 4.2, the one city councillor point needs to be bulleted consistently in the version I'm looking at.
Yeah.
In 4.3, it refers to the board, which I think is a throwback to the Cultural Advisory Board. So we need to take out board and say CBC. And then I think in point 4.4, it says a public forum shall be held with an open invitation to all arts and cultural organizations and individuals. Can we say arts, culture, and heritage there? Then we get into 4.5, which for now is just called cultural grants. Could it be called arts, culture, and heritage grants, or is that overstepping into something in terms of like heritage committee stuff? Or outside of the scope of ACAP?
No, because I think there's heritage grants with the Municipal Heritage Committee that are related to the building. But people, like some of the grant applications we have looked at have a heritage spin on them, right? So there are components that are there. So I think that's fine.
Okay. And the only other suggestion on this point is to start it by saying the CVC will implement, and should we say too that we are overseeing the application process, or like we do more than just implement it, because we also look after and sort of steward the review process. But in terms of oversight of the process, we also as a committee have tons of support from folks at the city, Todd and Virginia particularly. So also, just a quick check-in around time. It's just hit 5:12 here by my clock. So typically we meet for an hour. We have been making pretty good progress through the last piece of the plan. Can we try to get through 4.10 tonight before we adjourn? Oh, Virginia.
Sorry, I just had a quick question as related to the one we were just on, 4.5 cultural grants. You think that it's redundant because under 3.5.2 or 3.5 is to provide arm's length funding of culture. 3.5.2 talks about how the committee screens all applications for grants and then makes the recommendations to council. Do you think it needs to be included in there since it's included in 3.5.2?
I think any place that it makes sense to take something out is probably a good savings. What do you think, Jane and Andrea?
I do agree with what Virginia is saying. And to your point, Miranda, unfortunately, I can't stay beyond 5:15.
Okay.
Because of other prior arrangements.
Thanks, Jane. Go ahead, Todd.
I think that was put in there just as part of those duties, right? It was like all the duties from the terms of reference for the committee. And I think that's why that got in there, because that was one of their big responsibilities, was overseeing the ACAP. But it is in the other part. So either way is good.
Andrea, do you have a strong opinion either way?
Just if the grants are covered enough in the 3.3 section, then take that section out because it's not fully fleshed out, or fully flesh out this section and refer to it in the other section.
We
Virginia?
also repeated in 4.8. So I think we got a bit of a repeat there because we talk about grant and award applications.
And it looks like section 4.8 is quite a fleshed out section as opposed to the one that we're looking at. So maybe remove the part that we're looking at, knowing that we're going to come back to it in 4.8. And 4.8 builds quite significantly on the last repeated point in the above section. So probably retain both of them for the moment. Cut the middle one out.
Sounds good.
All righty. Well, we're at time for the meeting, which means that when we come back next time, we'll be starting at 4.6, which is the cultural plan. So in terms of setting a next meeting date, I'm going to be away, but back the week of September 13th. So if we're looking at September, I could meet anytime after the 13th. August is a little bit crunchy, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the committee can't meet if somebody else is willing to chair the meeting. Any thoughts around availability for folks?
Me, I'm out for the rest of the month of August.
Thank you, Jane. How about you, Andrea?
Yeah, my August is quite swamped and maybe things will get easier in September.
Right for the start of school. You're optimistic, Andrea.
I'm hopeful. I'm trying to get this 7-year report done, so it's massive, and so many other things are coming up all the time.
Yeah.
So
Well, I guess as well, if anybody has any thoughts that they'd like to submit on those last little sections, we can take those and then we can do a bit of a doodle poll to see if we can get quorum for a meeting. And if there's any other comments, just forward them on and then we can compile them and see if we can get quorum, and we'll take it from there.
Sounds good.
Summer's going by very quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah, already halfway through. Todd, do you have a question?
just more of a comment. Just want to follow up on Virginia's, like if everybody could just go through those last few sections, there's not a lot left there. And send their comments to me. I will collate everything, make all the changes, make the notes for everything, and then send it to everybody so that at the next meeting, we have a very kind of complete picture there that hopefully we can get through this and put together the package for the CVC committee and get this along with a number of the other initiatives, plans and policies and stuff we've been working on, and try and get these things wrapped up into the committee. We're on a bit of a crunch on some of these, especially the ones related to the ACAP. So if you could do that, that would be excellent. And like I said, I'll turn those around as quickly as possible and get them out to everybody.
Thanks, Todd. Virginia.
Just quickly, I really want to thank everybody for all your hard work and your comments. I think this is going to be a really strong document by the time we're done and very encompassing. So thank you for all your input.
Thanks, Todd and Virginia, for your support always. And thanks, Jane and Andrea, for the discussion tonight. Can I get a motion, please, to adjourn this meeting of the Cultural Policy Review Committee for August the 4th? Can I get a mover, Andrea? And a second? Can I second? We all second. Great. And if there's no discussion, then we'll approve the motion to adjourn with thanks to you all for your contributions tonight. Take good care.
Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.